It is Wednesday, September 8th, 2021, 6:04 p.m. This regular Board of Commissioners meeting is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks?
Here.
Vice Mayor Price? Here. Commissioner Hodges? Here. Commissioner Andrews?
Here.
Commissioner Hudson?
Here. If you will, join us and Commissioner Hedges for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful decisions, allow us to grow closer as a group, and to nurture the bonds of our community.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next on the agenda is public comment. This is for anything that is not on the agenda. If you have a comment to make, please come up to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to speak. Yes, sir.
May I?
Sure.
Well, good evening, and first of all, thank you all for having us. My name is Kimberly Jackson. I'm with Sam Jenkins, and we work at the Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. I'm the executive director, and we were created by Congressman Bill Young at St. Petersburg College. Congressman Young created us to be a convener in the entirety of the community as a way to have a connector to government in a civil way, to have social, political, and economic conversations in a nonpartisan manner. And it is our goal to make his mission come alive. We work with the entirety of the Florida college system. We work for the entirety of Pinellas County, Pasco, and we're making ourselves available to the state and nationally. Our congressional leaders have been coming home to work with us, from criminal justice reform with Senators Rouson and Brandis to Jerry Parrish at the Florida Chamber of Commerce. We're very honored and grateful for President Barry Rubin for honoring us with allowing us to be a part of your chamber. So we are new members. We are active members. Sam is our project coordinator, and he has been intimately involved in making sure that we're addressing the needs, particularly of this area. So with that, I'm just going to defer and let Sam say a couple of words. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for having us. We just wanted to really introduce ourselves to your commission, to your beautiful city. You know, we're members of the chamber, big fans of Barry. We've known Barry for a while, but just want to be more active in the community. If we can ever serve you guys, you know, on any policy issues or convene stakeholders in your community, we appreciate your time, effort, and always thank you, Mayor. It's great to meet you over the past couple of events. And yes, thank you. Let us know. We'll drop off our cards too, but appreciate your time. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Ray Kerr, Madeira Beach resident. I have two items. First, it is just on the public comment part. It's encouraged, yet they want your name and address, which is being broadcast to the world. I just want the commission to think about that a little bit. I think it's important that you know whether you're a Madeira Beach resident or not, or how you're affiliated. Just had speakers here. They're affiliated with a group, and that's important. So, but the second item goes back to the city manager prior to Bob. It's possible it'll go to a city manager to next, but it has to do with the slow speed minimum wait zone. Asking for an update or contacts with the FLC. I know it's been approved by the board as part of the Municode. but it's unenforceable until the Fish and Wildlife sign off on it. So I don't know where it's going with the city manager, but I just don't want it to get dropped. So if the residents can be involved, it's not just me, it's a bunch of us. So I speak for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
just to update everyone, the mayor and I both had an opportunity to meet the interim director for DEP and also the FWC director at a Big C event that they had, and we've forwarded that directly to him, and we're awaiting a response. It's been about a week and a half, so but I will keep you in the loop, Ray, and I hope to get that done before anything changes here. So.
And Ray, I promise that was not me going by throwing up a big wake by your house. Anyone else? Okay. Next is the consent agenda. Is there any member of the board that would like to pull anything on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is approval of the minutes.
That was on the
Yeah, we
consent
just did
agenda.
Oh, sorry about that. Next is public hearings. First on public hearings is Ordinance 2021-05, proposed amendment to the City of Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Animals, Chickens, second reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Ordinance 2021-05. I'll read it by title only. An ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 10, Animals of the City Code of Ordinances, Section 10-2(a)(3), to delete the reference to chickens, and create Section 10-15, providing for the regulation of chickens in backyards, and providing for an effective date. That was the second and final reading of Ordinance 2021-05 by title only.
Okay, thank you. Director Portal, have you got anything for us on this?
We do. We have a senior planner, Jenny Rowan's going to explain this to you briefly.
Okay.
Thank you. This item includes the removal of chickens from the list of prohibited animals in Section 10-2 and also creates Section 10-15 to regulate backyard chickens. During first hearing, the board voted to approve the ordinance with the addition that it only applies to non-waterfront properties. The ordinance now specifies that backyard chickens are only allowed on non-waterfront properties in the R1 and R2 zoning districts.
And when we refer to chickens, we mean hens.
Hens, correct.
And is that specific in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, is there any discussion amongst the commission? Come on, Doug, I'm sure you want to cluck about it, so.
Thank you, Mayor, for the floor, but I'm going to decline.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to pass Ordinance 2021-05.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
No.
The motion carried 4-1.
Next is Ordinance 2021-14, proposed amendment to the City of Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances, Article 1, Section 66-2, motor vehicles prohibited on the beach areas exception, to prohibit the operation of electric bicycles on the beaches, adding section 66-2C, providing exceptions for personal assistive devices, second reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is Ordinance 2021-14. I'll read it by title only. An ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Section 66-2 titled Motor Vehicles Prohibited on Public Beach Areas, exception of the Code of Ordinances to include a prohibition for the operation of electric bicycles on beaches, as well as an exception for personal assistive mobility devices, and providing for an effective date. That's the second and final reading of Ordinance 2021-14 by title only.
I will say on this, the Big C has discussed this. We're trying to get consistent ordinances up and down the beach so that people are not going from one community to another and not know what the ordinances are. So we are trying to maintain a consistent ordinance up and down the beach. So is there any comments from the commission on this?
No. I like it.
Is there any public comment on this?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I do have one electronic comment, if I may. This is...
Okay. All right. I didn't think we were taking public comments anymore.
Apparently, this comment was taken, and there were comments out of another one. At the advice of Mr. Trask, I'm going to just read these in for today, and that'll be the last of it. This is from Rodney Riggio, 161 Medallion Boulevard B. My comments are related to the prohibition of electric bikes on the beaches. I understand that the public needs to be protected, and at peak times of day and holiday weekends, the beach is crowded, and it's not wise to have electric bikes traverse the beaches during those times. But anyone who has lived here at the beach for long knows that in the early mornings, say before 9 a.m., that the beaches are completely empty and almost totally void of people. This short window of time between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. is the perfect time for a beach community that endorses physical activity, mental and emotional health, and clean green energy, to allow electric biking community to have a small treat of connecting with nature. My suggestion negates almost any possibility of an e-bike accident, protects the public, and still allows for e-biking community to enjoy some of the small part of the beach and its healing properties. I kindly ask that you consider adding a provision into this e-bike ordinance that makes logical sense, protects the public, and yet allows it less than ideal mobility to be able to get into their bikes, or onto their bikes, I apologize, and take a short cruise before the beach becomes populated. Madeira Beach can become the example of balancing nature with technology improvements, yet keep the public safe. A true win-win for all. Thank you for your time and consideration in my minor modification to the total ban being considered. I do have a comment too, if I may. The problem is we have turtles that come out during that time frame, so my suggestion would be against the revision.
Isn't getting exercise on an electric bike kind of an oxymoron? I'm not sure, but any other comments? Any comments from the public on this? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we pass ordinance number 2021-14 regarding motor vehicles prohibited on our public beach areas.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is Ordinance 2021-15, proposed amendment to the City of Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances, Division 4, Accessory Structures, Section 110-472-R1, Single Family Residence Zones, first reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask.
Mayor Commissioners, this is Ordinance 2021-15. I'll read it by title only. An ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Section 110-472 titled R1 Single Family Residential Zones of the City Code of Ordinances to amend the setback distance for accessory structures in R1 districts and providing for an effective date. That was the first reading of Ordinance 2021-15 by title only.
Okay, thank you. Director Portell.
Yes, good evening. This is an ordinance that the City Commission actually requested and referred back to the Planning Commission and the staff for review. We had come to you to talk generally about accessory structures last fall, I think, and at that point the Commission, after discussing it, decided that the main thing they were concerned about was the setback difference between R1 and R2. The setbacks for accessory structures are the same as the setback for the primary structure on lots that are on the water. It's different on inland lots where they can set back all the way to within 2 feet of the border. So the Commission asked us please to come back and allow the R1 lots the same setback so they had a little bit more room to work with to put their accessory structures within 25 feet the same way that the R2 did. That was the only section that was referred to us out of the accessory structures section, and so that is what is before you today.
Okay. Is there any discussion amongst the commission?
I have a question for the director. I have a neighbor who has the structures in his backyard, and I believe we spoke about this one time before. Now, these structures are actually buried in the ground. They're not covering anything. It's wide open, and he has them measured out between them, so they're not like right on top of each other. They are extended out. And with this here, you know, he'd have to cut those posts down. And I believe, Dave, they're what, 15 feet into the ground or 10 feet?
No, they're 3.5 to 4 feet cemented, and have a cement pedestal on top of that. It's up with a pier.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but this isn't being picked up on record.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If you open up to public comment.
Okay, but the fact of it is that he has this done, and it's done really nice. And it looks really good. He's not going to put covering over it. And it's going to be out there in the open. And I was just wondering if this is something that we can add to this, saying that we don't have to have that under this policy. In fact, there's nothing here saying anything about columns.
Actually, there are sections of the code that deal with garden ornamentation and things of that nature, and we have been working with Mr. Slosser to discuss what options are available. Even those, however, do require a certain setback from the side setback, and that may be an issue. We continue to work with him on that. All of these are defined as structures, and structures require a permit. None of that work involved a permit, so that is an issue. Also, there is electricity extended out to it that also was not permitted or inspected, which is also a code of compliance issue. So there's nothing in the code that allows us to just turn our backs on permit requirements, and we must adhere to the definitions that are in the code now. This section I brought you doesn't really address that because that wasn't what you decided on referring back to me last time. There was a wide open discussion.
Right.
At the time, I think some reference to it came up and then it just died in conversation. I would suggest that if you would like to move forward with this and go ahead and approve this section, because this is something that you wanted done, that the issue of accessory structures and definitions and things like that could be put on a workshop agenda when you have more time for us to bring everything in front of you, and then interested parties have more time to speak to the issue.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I would like to see some consistency in what we call accessory structures, we have definitions, accessory buildings that aren't even used in our code and things like that. So we need to, I guess, define it a little bit better than to give some of our citizens have some direction.
We have, as you know, lots of issues with our code. And it's been amended here, there, and everywhere since '83. Most of this was put in place in '83. And sometimes you amend one section without any understanding of the impact it's going to have on other sections. So it's time for us to do an overhaul. We don't have definitions on many things throughout the code. It's standard for communities to make a certain amount of interpretations and applications of professional standards to codes because it's impossible to cover all possible applications or all possible uses. Things change all the time. So you're supposed to use a reasonable person's approach and standard whenever there's questions. However, if you're aware of inconsistencies or problems in definitions, by all means, we should be correcting those. We've been working on a full set of definitions and things that are missing now, and as I've explained, we're working round the clock almost to get our comp plan and the activity centers and everything done. We really want to come back to you with a full code revision after that involves input from the community. So, yeah, these are things that we definitely will need to talk about, if not now, later. But this issue has been on the books for over a year, and the intent was to talk about it before, so I suggest we get it put on a workshop agenda.
Yeah, this is mainly to change the setback from 30 feet to 25
Correct.
feet. So we do need to clean this up, but I also think, though, we need to move ahead with this to get that setback taken care of.
Mr. Mayor, may I stay off topic for 1 second, though? I think the issue, and Director Portel, I'm glad you're working with Mr. Slosser on his issue, but I believe he's got a magistrate hearing set coming up here shortly.
Yes.
While we're continuing, he's working in good faith, I would imagine. He doesn't seem like a guy that would not work in good faith. If he's working in good faith with us, can we pull it off the magistrate hearing for now until we get some type of idea of what exactly we're doing code-wise and what we can approve with him and get kind of push forward? I'd hate to have him go in front of the magistrate and us waste money on something that we can settle in-house.
Sure. We've actually been continuing it for a year, so
okay. So,
that's a possibility. I would suggest, though, that in order to show good faith, as you're saying, it would be a good idea to come in with a plan for all of that and request a permit, because no matter what we do, a permit's going to be required in the end. And for safety reasons, we need to look at it and make sure everything is connected properly.
Totally agree. You're the boss as far as that's concerned, but if he comes in and shows that good faith, can we pull it off the magistrate so we can work diligently with him?
I suggest that we continue it because it is an item of permit.
Okay.
But perhaps by then we'll have resolved some issues. We'll continue to work with the magistrate in terms of definition, too. That's a possibility as well.
Mr. Slosser, is that good by you? Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I do have one suggestion, though. I don't understand why we are amending section 110-472 when that section has nothing at all to do with 25 or 30 foot. The section we should be amending is section 110-181, of which I've given everybody a copy. Or I emailed everybody, and I think you have it. If you look on page 1, those are the existing setbacks for R1, R2, R3. They're all nicely in a row. They all kind of track the same language. So I don't think we want to change just the language in R1 on that. But if you turn the page and see section 110-181, that is where the 30 feet appears. So if we're going to alter section 110-472, as you suggest, we're going to have to alter 110-181 anyway. You might as well just alter 110-181 and just make that, rear yard waterfront lots 25 feet instead of 30. You see what I mean?
Yes, if we, that would have, I'd like to look at it, make sure that they're meshing properly. Your point is well made. It should have adopted actually both sections.
I don't think you have to do I don't think you have to do 110-472 if you change the 30 feet to 25 in 110-181.
We do have to address, at least in analysis, the implication of changing the definition of rear yards. That's also another I've brought that to your attention before, that just the definition of rear yard is somewhat discriminatory depending on where your house is placed. You are more regulated actually in an older house that's further from the water than in a newer house that takes full advantage of the building setbacks. So there's some inconsistency there as well. I was hoping we could get back to fixing that fence thing and all of the inconsistencies in dealing with that. If you'd like, we can continue this and bring it back with the others that go with it, or we can go ahead and do this when I can bring you the other portions as a follow-up.
Well, if we go ahead and do the first reading and then do the second reading, we still get the 25-foot setback in place. Is that correct?
But it conflicts with the very next.
Yeah.
Good point.
I see the point. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
One would be more specific than the other, so that would be up to interpretation, but I believe it's usually best to have everything consistent.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking the most recent would override the older one as far as the setback itself goes.
It could specify that in the ordinance. I think Mr. Trask would like to address that.
So, Mayor, you can go ahead and adopt this ordinance tonight. We just won't set it for second reading until the other section is brought forward under first reading, and then the second readings we'll do them concurrent.
Okay.
So you can keep them moving. You've already got this one in the hopper. We just won't finalize it until the other one comes completely through at the same time.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
Great.
Well, then I would request that if we're going to alter the accessory structure language for R1 and specifically put a 25 feet in there, that we do the same for R2 and R3 so that they're
Yes, the 25 feet is consistent with R2, which is, we would have to do all sections of this, but
I mean the language.
Yeah.
This is what drives people crazy when they look at our ordinances.
Oh, I know, I
here we
hear
have
about it
a
all
nice
the time.
clean view, and we're messing up one of them,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, we'll come back with all of
Okay.
the amendments.
All right. Well, I like the result, put it that way. I agree with that, and I think we all do.
Yeah.
But I guess we're just picking on where it's going to be in our.
Eventually, we'd like to come back to you with sets of code that put all of these in grids and in format, in a form-based code, so you can see all of them in one place instead of having to flip back and forth through the code. So part of the code review that we've been talking about is actually making it more usable and getting rid of all those inconsistencies. Once they're lined up together, you can see them better.
No.
So it's going to be an effort.
Do we need to get an expert in on that to help that move along?
Well,
You've got an expert.
For a living.
She's got her hands full with this
well,
stuff going on up and down.
We can't really do the full code until we finish the comp plan because that's the basis. So all of the policy that we're putting in place now, in fact, the detail that we're going into with the activity center will actually form a skeletal outline for how we will want to adjust the rest of the code. So we're working on it as we go. It'll gel better once all of the comp plan is updated, though. That's your policy driver.
I would hope that we would put all the setbacks, restrictions, and all the language for R1 in one place. Then you move on to R2, and you get all the information on that, instead of picking a topic, and each topic says R1, R2, R3, C1, C5. You know.
Yes, there's much better ways of doing this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I have rewritten other codes to try to make them more usable, and there are formats that just lend themselves better to a usable code than this hodgepodge that you're dealing with. This was put together in 1983. It hasn't really, format-wise, hasn't been updated, so that's a problem.
And I thought that the last time we talked about this up here, we did ask to have a definition of accessory structure.
Well, there's already a definition of accessory structure in the code.
Right.
And it's pretty much consistent with what others are using for accessory structure. And we talked about just that we have to be careful with that because everything that's listed there requires a permit, and there are implications for safety in the floodplain. So, but we do need to look at that more carefully as well. That's a separate item that will involve the definitions. That's why I said we're looking at the entire definition section in order to resolve these, because if I change one thing, then we've got to change several others as well.
Right.
So we're working on that. It's a big one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, it does seem to be a big one.
Yeah, we have actually put someone else on to help the planning department on catching a lot of this stuff up too.
Oh, good. Okay.
So is there any more comments amongst the commission? Is there any public comment on this? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Hendricks, Vice Mayor Price, Commission staff. My name's Karen Slosser, and I'm from 494 Crystal Drive, and I loved hearing some of your discussion right now. So some of what I had planned to say is actually going to sound like some reiteration, but I still think it's important for me to make my comments because they bring up some of the discrepancies and things that you have just already begun to discuss. So I'll just kind of read through what I've got prepared. It's easier because I'm a little nervous if I were to speak off the cuff. We did send some presentation slides earlier in the day, and I'll be referring to content of those. And even if you haven't seen them, though, I think my comments will be clear. As you know, and as you've said, the board is considering a vote on revising Division 4 accessory structures, the rear yard setback 30 to 25, with the intent to reduce inconsistencies. However, I think as Vice Mayor Price mentioned, the R1 setback still remains elsewhere. Right now, I want to focus on the first sentence of the Division 4 section that's in the packet that you've received and provided to all of yourselves. Section 110-472 states, accessory structures may not be located in front yards. This, unfortunately, introduces some really absurd unintended consequences because, as you said, the Madeira Beach definition of accessory structures is quite broad to almost the extreme. The definition actually includes driveways, fences, signs, walkways, carports, planters, and much more. There are also separate code sections for driveways and sidewalks, for example, but our municipal code currently states that for any conflicting regulations, the provisions which are more restrictive shall govern. So that takes us back again to that very first sentence of Division 4, which again, I state, says, accessory structures may not be located in front yards. So this is one of the discrepancies that are in place, in addition to some of the other things that you've discussed tonight. So a vote to approve this small subsection change, I believe, actually puts the BOC's stamp of approval on this no accessory structures in front yards, and I can't believe that's really the intent of the board. And as you've discussed beautifully tonight, this is unfortunately the tip of the iceberg. Division 4 is full of unintended consequences that can't really be adequately discussed tonight. There truly does need to be a more extensive review and revision to address the code that's evolved over the years. So, I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Jim Nolan. I live at 496 Crystal Drive, and we didn't think that everything could be done in 3 minutes, so I'm going to pick up. There's more. Let's look a little bit deeper, the maximum size of some of these structures. The maximum size for an accessory structure will be 8 feet wide by 10 feet long by 8 feet high. Some of these accessories included driveways, air conditioning systems, carports, signs, whatever. So none of us are going to have a driveway that's only 8 feet by 10 feet. That's essentially the size of parking space. Only one accessory structure may be placed on any lot or a group of lots under the same ownership. So let's picture we have, that means only one air conditioning compressor for 4 condominium units that are owned by the same people. And then, so it's essentially what we really need to do is just readdress accessory buildings and accessory structures, and I'm glad to hear it sounds like you're really a lot further along than I was led to believe. I learned about this afternoon, so so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Hendricks, Vice Mayor Price, Commissioners, staff, David Schlosser, 494 Crystal Drive. So you just heard from my wife, you just heard from Jim, my neighbor. What is or was the purpose of Division 4? It's originally, and I've done a lot of research on this, as you all may know or realize, what is or was the purpose of Division 4? Originally, it was written as accessory buildings. And all the things that you read through in Division 4 make sense if you substitute accessory buildings in place of accessory structures. The purpose was to promote openness along the streets and the waterways. Openness in the front yard, I think, is still valid. I think that's still desirable. Openness in the back, I think no longer exists. That's an obsolete concept since the advent of the big boats and lifts and now hedges. In recent backyard privacy versus view debate, as privacy gained primacy and view lost relevance, then I started hearing, well, FEMA is the new reason for Division 4. So I did some research into FEMA. The FEMA website explicitly states that the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, does not require setbacks. FEMA, including for flood management purposes, defines structure as a building with at least 2 walls and a fixed roof. NFIP defines accessory structure as a building incidental to the principal building, and they use building and structure interchangeably. So it's not clear how FEMA actually has any impact on Division 4. It might, but it's not clear. Summary, so changing 30 to 25 feet is a positive step. Nobody disagrees with that, but it has very, very little impact without more sweeping revisions. And it leaves almost all of Madeira Beach properties, and maybe all, still in violation of this section, because everyone that has a driveway is technically in violation. Recommendations is that I think that Division 4 should be repealed or revoked until the section is revised and makes sense. 2, I think the revised Division 4 should incorporate a plan for implementation and enforcement, because if we're going to have this on the books, it should be enforceable. And 3, I think this should be sent back to the Planning Committee with comprehensive guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor for Ordinance 2021-15?
Sure, I'll make a motion to pass Ordinance 2021-15.
So second? Having no second, I guess we'll kick this can down the road.
Yep. The motion died for lack of a second.
Next is Ordinance 2021-16, Amendment to the City of Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Florida Building Code, Floodplain References, first reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Ordinance 2021-16, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 14, Buildings and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Madeira Beach to provide consistency with and in support of adopted provisions of Chapter 94, Floodplain Management of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Madeira Beach, providing for conflict, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. That was the first reading of Ordinance 2021-16 by title only.
Director Portel.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, you recently adopted changes to the Chapter 94 Floodplain Management Ordinance, and there are other portions of the code that are implicated in those changes, are involved in our use of the building code. And so this is a follow-up to amend Chapter 14 so that it's consistent with Chapter 94. We've had input, obviously, from the building official who has reviewed this and reviewed it with others in the building community. And also, we've had a lot of input from the state because they have to review all of our floodplain management issues against their own floodplain codes to make sure we're all consistent statewide. So the only thing in here that is actually different than what, or in addition to what you discussed with Chapter 94, is this is the spot where they suggested we put the requirement for gutters on houses. You know, we run into problems continuously, and I know you get calls about people who are concerned that the next door neighbor is draining onto their property. And one of the ways to control for that on our really small lots is for the new house to have gutters that direct the water either to the street or to the seawall, depending on which direction it's supposed to be going. And so as part of their drainage plan, usually the language says gutters or other appropriate means of control for that drainage problem. And this is something come up all the time. The other thing is that what the state is suggesting for compliance and consistency with FEMA is that our non-conversion agreement apply to commercial buildings as well as to residential. In most cases, it would have no real bearing on the commercial building because they're either open for parking on the ground floor or they're flood-proofed. So even in our coastal A area, they have to be flood-proofed. In the other A zones, the main purpose in having that language is to get people to read that ahead of time, commit the building owners to commit to understanding what the code already says, and to not turn their ground floor into occupied, in particular into residential space, because we can't have residential space on the ground floor. So they were suggesting that. So most cases it wouldn't really affect the way anybody's moving. It's just an extra agreement to draw their attention to what they're getting into. Those are the only two additional changes that are made to this section, because there wasn't any place to put them in the other Chapter 94 that everybody was comfortable with.
Okay, and obviously as the floodplain manager, you're recommending for adoption of this?
Yes.
Are there any comments by the commission?
I've got one question.
Mm-hmm.
Are any of these restrictions that we put in here, 4 feet instead of 2 feet, and gutters and all that, are any of these more restrictive than what the state requires?
Well, yes. I mean, we all in Florida, we have to have a minimum of a 1 foot freeboard. And so you add freeboard in order to get additional points and additional reduction in your insurance rates. Also, just for protection, because especially now with Florida's, or the FEMA's maps have come out, and we've shared all that with you, that the new maps are out, and we're using those. We had to have them adopted by the 24th of August. But in addition to that, the county has also conducted its study on inundation and peril of flood. And their study shows that flood levels are expected to become much higher, actually, than what the FEMA map is showing. The FEMA had quit map, for the purpose of the FEMA map, they had finished collecting data by 2008. That's how long it takes them to get everything redrawn. But the counties went through 2014, and of course, in recent years, we've had much more impactful storms, larger storms more often. So the data that they collected showed a higher flood level and more wave action. So we recommended the additional freeboard in the Chapter 94, which you've already adopted, to get everybody up above that wave level. We really don't want to have our floodplains levels, our flood expectations at levels that don't actually keep the water out of people's houses. It worries me, the idea that we say, yeah, you know, if you build up this high, you'll be above the 100-year flood, but when the flood involves waves, those waves would actually be coming into the house. So that's one spot where we're more restrictive. Each local government gets points for being more restrictive.
Freeboard, are you talking about the section where we are increasing our lowest level 4 feet instead of 2 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
It's the
because I didn't see freeboard in here at all.
Yeah, it's the number of feet. Oh, you mentioned it. Yeah, it's the number of feet above the still water in a 100-year flood. Because we're out here in the wind, and we know the flood doesn't usually come up still. If it gets that high, there's probably wind involved with it.
Right, okay.
I know when Hurricane Elsa just went by, and it was way offshore, and I went down to Johns Pass Village because I wanted to look and see what was going on there. And even with that, way offshore, and really we weren't affected. We had waves breaking under the Hubbard property. So this is comparable, I would say, to what Miami-Dade did after Hurricane Andrew. I would rather be a leader than a follower on this one. So I support it.
We only really get extra credit for the first 3 feet of freeboard, but we were dealing with the county's map showing more extreme flooding, and it was a way for us to go ahead and adopt the FEMA map, but to also protect everybody. I do suggest we come back and get a presentation when the county has really adopted their map, because it's new best available data, and I think you and the people of the community will want to know what that study shows, and if we want to make any additional changes, we really need to fully investigate what they've found first.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think St. Pete Beach is going to a 5-foot freeboard.
Wow.
So it's something to think about, and even start talking to people about as they replace their seawall, going up higher with a seawall. It may be a 30-year, 40-year build out for the city, but eventually everybody will have the higher seawalls. Just food for thought.
It's one way some are going, yeah.
So I won't be here, but.
And you did say in one of the earlier meetings that Madeira Beach all the properties are 3 or 4 feet above the base?
Exactly. Typically, our, properties are sitting somewhere between 3 and 6 feet. And so when you count the base flood, you kind of take that off the bottom. You're not starting at 0, you're starting at 3 if you're above sea level by 3. That's what it's counting, is at sea level. So if your 100-year flood on your property would reach 13 feet, but your property is 3 feet above sea level, then your flood is only 10 feet. And so the 4 feet would be on that 10. You'd end up with a 14-foot bottom floor instead of a 10-foot bottom floor.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other comments from the commission? Is there any public comment on this? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Ordinance 2021-16.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is Ordinance 2021-17, Amendment to the City of Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances, Division 3, Landscape Fences, Gates, Hedges, and Walls, Section 110-446, Applicability of Divisions, Section 110-447, Location and Height of Fences, Hedges, Walls, Providing for Consistency, second reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Ordinance 2021-17, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Section 110-446, applicability of division, Section 110-447, location and height of fences, hedges, and walls, of Division 3, landscape fences, gates, hedges, and walls of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Madeira Beach, and providing for an effective date. That was the second and final reading of Ordinance 2021-17 by title only.
Director Portell, you're popular tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I can hardly stand it. This was also a referral from the commission who wanted to deal with the height of hedges in the backyard. Currently, the hedges are required to be trimmed to the same height as the wall or the fence, which will be either 3 foot for a solid wall or fence or 4 foot for an open fence. And there's discussion about how over the years the community standard for this has obviously changed, because if you look out the window here, you can see easily that there are properties all over where large plants have been planted, trees, and everything is meshed together, and it's not unusual to have plant life growing at full height. And the commission was comfortable with that being the new community standard and recommended that we take off the limitations of height from the hedges in the backyard so that they could grow to full height.
Okay. Any comment from the commission?
I don't recall us approving this the last time.
Yes.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
We did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
No comment from the commission. Is there any public comment on this?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and staff, David Schlosser, 494 Crystal Drive. I think the root cause of the reason for all the hedges growing up is because of the 3 foot fence height, because you can only have a fence 3 foot, so you can stand there and just kind of look and see what's happening in your neighbor's pool. And I've heard a lot of discussion over the past year about privacy versus views, and in the end, I thought that was a fruitful discussion and ended up in a good place. I think privacy won, which in my opinion was good. However, I was surprised to see that all the positives that came out of that discussion got watered down and diluted, in my opinion, and narrowed to just hedges. Why leave the fences 3 foot? I think not everybody that wants privacy can grow a hedge, but most could put up a fence for privacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Right.
Ray Kerr, Madeira Beach resident. I thought the Planning Commission voted against this, voted it down.
That's right.
I thought the Planning Commission voted this down.
Say your address, please.
Madeira Beach resident.
Your street address, please, Ray.
Other people come up and say protected address. How's that any different?
Because legally they're protected. They're police officers, they're judges. They're legally protected. Your address?
583 Johns Pass Avenue, Madeira Beach.
Thank you.
It's my opinion that the hedges, the ordinance should stay at the same height as the fence line. However, if the hedges start to grow up and two neighbors are neighborly and don't care, it's not enforceable. It's not enforceable until someone complains. That's been brought up. So if no one complains, you're gonna have what you're gonna have. But if someone complains, at least we have some level of ordinance to go by so that a decision could be made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
If I could clarify a couple things for the record. 3-foot walls are not acceptable near pools, for one.
Right.
4-foot are
4 foot.
required, yes. The commission did actually discuss this item with both the fences and the landscape and decided they wanted to leave the fences intact specifically. And the last time it came to you at first reading, I presented the Planning Commission's recommendations and their full argument. And you decided to move forward with first reading, and so we're back without going through all that again.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I think we need a distinction between greenery and fences and walls. We didn't want walls and fences really tall all the way to the water line, but we were open to people having palms and greenery to let it grow to whatever height.
Correct.
So, and it was one of those things where it's all over the place anyway, so.
Any other comments? Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Ordinance 2021-17, amendment to allow higher heights on hedges and vegetation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Next is Ordinance 2021-18, amendment to the City of Madeira Beach, Florida Code of Ordinances, Chapter 82, General Provisions, Section 82-2, definitions to respond to modern use of hedges and support the intent of the code to protect the open character of the community. Second reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Ordinance 2021-18. I'm going to read it by title only. An ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending the definition of hedges in Section 82-2, definitions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Madeira Beach and providing for an effective date. That was the second final reading of Ordinance 2021-18 by title only.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioner, this is second reading as was stated, and did discuss this thoroughly. The purpose is to provide a more expansive definition for what constitutes a hedge, because the current code defines it only by reference to small woody shrubs. So there are a lot of things that people can use to go into a hedge, and we wanted to make sure we covered that, because at this point, especially with the use of more tropical plants here, it's unenforceable.
Thank you. Are there any comments amongst the commission? Are there any public comments on this item? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass Ordinance 2021-18.
Second.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is 2 APS licensed alcohol beverage use application. ABP 2021-06 for beer and wine package sales. 2 APS licensed with stated intent to sell beer and wine for off-premises consumption to be sold at Supermart located at 14201 Gulf Boulevard, Madeira Beach, Florida. Director Portell.
Mayor, I need to jump in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. I just want to talk about the procedures, if I can do that, and then I'm going to swear everybody in. Okay. So the public will understand this. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Board of Commissioners acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it's not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at this hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the code, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the code, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. With that being said, I need to swear in any witnesses that are going to speak tonight. If you could stand up, raise your right hand, and be sworn under oath. Anyone that's going to speak. You swear that the testimony you're about to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, Mayor, it would be staff presentation at this point.
Okay.
Thank you. And because you are required to come to findings, I go through the full staff report and I mention each of the findings, at least in a summary way, and I would like to move that the staff report be included in the record in full. This is the request to actually move an alcoholic beverage establishment from its current location down the block on Gulf Boulevard. It is proposed to go into a currently vacant space that has been derelict, and we've been, over the course of the 4 years I've been here, have been trying one group after another to get them permitted and working in that space, but nothing has ever come about or to fulfillment. And so this is actually an improvement for us to have some activity in that space and have it cleaned up. The extent, the first of your finding is the extent to which the location and its proposed alcoholic beverage request will adversely affect the character of the existing neighborhood. The supermarket will be located in a C3 retail commercial zoning district. The C3 retail does provide for services for both permanent and transient residents with a full range of urban services already available at that site. The beer and wine package sale and the retail establishment are all allowed in the zoning district. Gulf Boulevard, of course, is a major corridor for commercial activity, and that it has a variety of businesses all along the corridor. These establishments, many of whom also provide beer and wine services or other liquor sales. There are also many lodging facilities and vacation rentals located along Gulf Boulevard or immediately adjacent to it. You must consider the extent to which the traffic generated as a result of the location of proposed alcoholic beverage request will create congestion and present a safety hazard. Again, this is already an operational business, and so its traffic impacts would just be moving down the block a bit. And we don't anticipate that it would have a negative impact on the existing traffic in that area because it's already counted. Okay. In addition, the traffic along there, it's going into an existing building, so it's not new trips. These are already trips that are approved as consistent with the zoning, that anything that would be allowed to go in there would be able to absorb.
Okay, and parking is not an issue at the new building?
Parking, there is parking available, and we've made sure that they have the number that are required along with any bicycle and access and handicap spaces. Okay. It's a challenge anywhere along Gulf Boulevard, and this one does share parking with the residential behind it, but there are adequate spaces per our code. Okay. So the supermarket will have the on-site parking. It's got pedestrian access via a sidewalk located in front of the building. There are various lodging facilities and vacation rentals along that walking distance along towards the business. Its current location has actually quite a bit of walk-in traffic, and they're anticipating that the same would be true at this location. The beer and wine bought at this establishment will not be consumed on site, so this is not contributing to a safety hazard of people drinking necessarily. So the petition involves moving the establishment and trips that are already counted. The next consideration is whether or not the proposed use is compatible with the location for which it's proposed. And one of the things that we have to look for is if it's consistent with other uses that are already developed. Specifically, the property is not located within 300 feet of a church, a synagogue, temple, or a place of religious worship, public or private school operated for the instruction of minors, or a youth recreation community center. Those are all things that we have to measure out each time to make sure there's no conflict of actual use even within the district that's allowed. And number 4, that whether or not the proposed use will adversely affect the public safety. Again, the supermarket is an established convenience store. It's already located nearby. The moving the location from the existing building to business to the next location is not expected to have any measurable impact on community safety. The site was previously approved as retail use and is vacant, which actually itself creates a bit of a hazard. Any kind of vacancy or dilapidated building or unkept building is also a safety issue, and so we're hoping that it actually improves property values and just general activity in that area. Finally, there's you must make no approvals of any application where the owner has outstanding charges and fees. The applicant has no outstanding fines or penalties owed to the city under any section of the code. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Is there any discussion amongst the commission?
So, Mayor, I need to finish the rest of the meeting. If there's any questions of the director, we need to finish those first. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak tonight? Seeing none. There are 2 emails that are going to need to be read out loud to you because they have not been provided to you before the hearing, and the city manager is going to do that, Mayor.
Okay.
And so if we just give him a minute, and then I'm going to wrap up for you.
The first email is from Pamela Fortier, 14146 Gulf Boulevard, 5C. I am firmly against granting a beer and wine package sales license to Bright Star 7, Inc. My condo is diagonally across from this address and next to the public access to the beach. There are already many infractions of the rules that I see often on the beach. This package permit would only increase infractions, thereby taxing the Pinellas Sheriff's Patrol, and granting this permit would very negatively impact the serenity of the beach. And the second comment is from Rod Gilley, 924 Coral Avenue Northwest, North Canton, Ohio. My residential condominium at 14141 Gulf Boulevard is immediately south of the property subject of this application. I'm unequivocally opposed to granting an alcohol license for this property. For over 20 years, I've observed this property failing to successfully support any retail business due to its location, configuration, and limited convenient parking. A location for primarily walk-in street purchases of alcoholic beverages is not in the best interest of the surrounding neighborhood nor the city of Madeira Beach. Ample locations to purchase beer and wine already exist in Madeira Beach, and this is not a benefit to nearby citizens and residents. The current location of this business has always been a negative aspect of Gulf Boulevard. Please deny this application. Gulf Boulevard will benefit from the absence of this business.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. So, Ms. Portell, did you want to go ahead and summarize, give your recommendations and the conditions that you're suggesting in your staff report?
We have, Staff recommends the approval with the following conditions. A certificate of occupancy is obtained and the completed installation of bike racks and other parking improvements are required before occupation. License should be activated. And with those additions, we would recommend approval. They find that it meets all of the findings of fact required for alcohol beverage establishments.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. It's to the commission for your consideration tonight.
Thank you. And since there is no public comment tonight, I think we've already discussed this, unless there's more discussion to come up. Do you have any comments on it?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's just 2 blocks down the road. I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing.
Right. That building
And
has
we just
been...
gave them we just updated their original one
Yeah.
a couple of months ago, as I
Yeah.
recall.
So,
Yeah, okay.
Is there a motion to...
I'll make a motion that we allow a 2 APS license for alcohol beverage application at the supermarket located at 14201 Gulf Boulevard.
With the staff conditions?
With the staff conditions, thank you.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is unfinished business. Has anyone got anything they'd like to bring up during this? Well, we'll get staff reports on down and whatnot. Something I wanted to bring up is protected addresses. And they're just that. And perhaps Mr. Daniels or Mr. Trask can let everyone know what protected addresses are and the reasons for them. And I will say that if we have anyone else that doesn't have a protected address and doesn't want to give his address here, they will not be allowed to speak.
Okay, I would caution you on that, Mayor. First of all, a protected address is an address that is an address related to a police officer, a judge, a special magistrate, someone that by state statute has the ability to have their address protected from public view. As for the legal obligation for someone to stand there and give their name and address, I would caution you that that is not a requirement to speak. And if we get to the point where we're requiring an actual address, it's nice to have them, obviously, so you know whether you're residents or not. But there is no legal requirement for that person standing there to even tell you his or her name. They just have the ability to talk to you through public comment. So I would caution you not to keep people from speaking if, in fact, that they hold back on their addresses or their names. They have no legal obligation to do that.
Thanks for clearing that up for me, because I did not know that.
Okay.
Next is, unless someone else has something under unfinished business. Next is contracts and agreements. Pinellas County Law Enforcement Services contract for fiscal year 2022. Mr. Daniels?
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. We were through this during the workshop meeting. It's the agreement that you have is for the same staffing that we currently have, the 2 community policing officers that handle code enforcement and the 24-hour coverage of 2 deputies 7 days a week. I believe it was, I can pull up the sheet, but it's roughly a little bit over 3% increase over last year's contract, which has been kind of consistent in the 3 that I've seen. So I recommend adoption of the new agreement.
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
Just a question. From reading this, it's possible for us to have 4 officers in the city at one time if we've got 2 on the streets and then the community police and the Jared doing the...
Yes,
Community
that's,
and code.
code
Right.
enforcement, that's what I was...
Community policing deputies in the code. Yes, the truth be known, we do get a lot of coverage from their traffic units, because, although it probably doesn't rise to your level, but when we do get complaints, I make sure that I forward those. And, but primarily, we pay extra for those 2 deputies to work code, not necessarily work the road patrol, but obviously if a police officer needs a backup or they get involved with the transient nature of some individuals that don't have a place to live, so they work on those projects. They're more a community policing type project than answering a call for an alarm or taking a report that the regular road deputies do.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to make sure that we are allowed to set the hours of the code enforcement officers.
Yes, we are.
Sometimes during turtle time, maybe have them come in at 1 in the afternoon and leave at 10 at night. So
during turtle time?
During turtle nesting time, to make sure that the hotels and condos have,
right. They usually come in
lighting.
earlier in the morning before the lights go out. But I know they have altered it primarily for the dogs on the beach problem, which is like the sunset issue.
Yeah.
And they do that periodically to it. But yes, we can, change their schedule. They work a 12-hour schedule basically, but we can modify that as it's needed. I'm sorry, they work a 10-hour schedule.
10 hour, okay.
Yeah, I apologize.
So that's 4 days a week, each of them?
They're 4 days a week, each of them.
Okay.
So now the road officers work a 12-hour schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, and our overnight guys patrol the beach for the turtles. I see them out there all the time, and they'll come in the store if I'm working overnight. And also, Dave, to your comment, if there's actually an incident around here, we don't just have 4 people here. They swarm. They come from everywhere. I get a
boats.
Right. I get a guy that steals a tuna salad sandwich. I got 8 cop cars in my freaking lot. So it's great. I mean, the coverage that they have is fantastic. And I think we've also done ourselves a real thumbs up here by not making them sit at our meetings and burn hours. And I think that's really helped out too, to get them out there doing the other stuff that they need to do. So I'm 100% for this.
Yep. Anyone else? Any comments from the audience? Jay, got something you want to talk about?
Next item up.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a motion to pass this?
I'll make
go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we accept and sign the newest Pinellas County Law Enforcement Services contract for year 2022.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is new business, purchase of a school bus for the Recreation Department. Mr. Hatch.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This item is essentially to get ahead of the 8 ball on the purchase of the school bus that is budgeted in next year's budget. The current lead time for school buses is about 8 months, which is a lot of time, considering the current condition of the bus we have. We do operate a 2010 Bluebird bus now. It was up for vehicle replacement 2 years ago, which we've pushed now 2 years just to get a little bit of extra life on it. But that extra 2 years of salt and sun and everything else is giving us fits every other week. So essentially, we're looking to piggyback off the Florida Department of Education contract, which would give us a purchase price of $110,199. We have budgeted $125,000 because that was around our initial quote, so we're saving about 14 and change. Included in this are some upgraded safety features for this bus that are now requirements for the child care program, state requirements, which are 3-point seat belts, rear-facing backup camera, which we've actually installed on the current bus, child check reminder system, which is buttons on both ends of the bus. You have to push it and you know that. And then that was it for that. So essentially, we're trying to get ahead, sign the contract now, get it moving, and then we'll do the expenditure in FY22. And then the one big difference in this is it will be a white bus and not your traditional yellow school bus, which will also help. It's not going to have the crossing bar, the stop signs, which helps us in our licensing for the bus drivers, because that's an additional endorsement that we are required to maintain. So school buses have a lot less, I guess, conditions on them as far as the annual inspections that we do, because all those moving parts tend to like to fall apart in the salt water. So anyway, I hope that's enough information, but just kind of give you guys the background and look for your approval.
Okay. I've got a question that has nothing to do with anything really, but
okay.
But do we have to pay sales tax on purchases like this?
No. I don't
No,
think so.
okay.
No, we're exempt.
I was just curious. I thought so, but, or I thought we didn't, but I was just curious. Okay, that's all I got.
Jay, are you bringing this up because of what? It's in the budget, right? You just want to get a jump on it and start it now before
Yes, sir.
October?
Essentially a letter of commitment
Oh, okay.
to purchase next year.
Okay, do it by me.
Yeah.
What are we doing with the old bus?
The old bus, we have two options. It was recommended by our mechanic that we hold on to it potentially as a backup if we ever need it. But we are also in the, I guess there's a decent market for buses now too. So I believe we're going to explore that option and just to see. There's some bus salespeople in the region that have approached us.
Dude, I say we gut it and go travel with the dead.
There you go.
So there's two options. We've gotten a couple numbers. I don't want to spit anything out and lose any sort of competitive advantage, but it's just been verbal stuff. So we'll at least have the discussion with those folks and see if there's a return on it.
Well,
Okay.
I'd say if it's in the budget and you're not paying for it till next year anyway, I don't think you have to come up here for this kind of stuff
I'd say
anymore.
go for it. I don't,
If we've discussed it, we've put it in the budget.
Well, technically, the budget hasn't been adopted at the second reading, so just in all, being transparent, we just wanted to let the commission know this is our preference, so we can get it sooner than later. I think we did this with one of the garbage trucks last year, if I recall, but,
So is this something we need to vote on then?
I'd prefer, since we don't have the budget approved, that, this way we can commit it and do the letter of intent.
And I appreciate your memo where you talked to the mechanic about this and everything, so it really, I appreciate your research and everything.
Yep. Thank you, Jay.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the school bus for the Recreation Department in fiscal year 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes?
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Okay, next is staff reports. Has anyone got anything for us?
I just want.
Okay, well, that's on down the list a little bit.
Oh.
So, next is agenda setting meeting for September 22nd workshop. Has anyone got anything to go on there?
Well, I'm with Mr. Kerr. I would like a more in-depth update on the minimum wage zone that we hope to get all over Madeira Beach, except for those few areas, as we've, I guess, petitioned the state for. So even though that gentleman, or you contacted him 2 weeks ago or something, maybe we can get something a little more firm for the September 22nd.
I will try my hardest.
Okay. Anyone got anything for the workshop?
I think Jay might need something on the agenda.
Two items on that. One was we discussed at the last budget workshop about the fireworks. So I've got a couple of ideas as to when, where, and how much. And then the second item, the Rotary was going to do the check presentation for the past carnival, so they were looking to do that as well. Tonight was too soon, so we're looking at, they want to do it this month, so.
Oh,
Okay. That may be all we're coming for then, other than, well, that and the fireworks.
But we have the, just before the workshop meeting, we'll have the second reading of the budget and the millage rate on the 22nd. So it'll be, hopefully, it'll be easy night. And keep in mind, I don't want to say this too loud, but you might have actually 2 weeks where you don't have a meeting.
Oh. Well, and then that morning, we have the
That's right. The 22nd, we have the town hall meeting, which is all set up for 8 o'clock at Mad Beach Brewery at Johns Pass Village.
Okay. All right, great.
Thank you for joining.
Boy, that's a relief. Okay, next is reports and correspondence, Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Hodges.
I just wanted to make an announcement, because Rotary is going to have Jeff Bagans on Tuesday, and also Jay will be there also as a speaker. It's going to be at the Cambria Hotel, 11:30 to 1. This is this coming Tuesday, so anyone that wants to come can come. So if you can make it, that'd be great.
Anyone else?
Can we add one page to either the workshops or maybe all the meetings that just show like our projects for the year? And maybe we have a start date added to that. So like the ball field lights, that was supposed to start in August. It's been postponed, and it's hopefully sometime this month. And security cameras, when are we planning for that to start? Johns Pass repairs, beach goings, just to kind of keep us on track for some of these things.
That is a good idea.
Good idea. To the monthly city manager's report?
Maybe with that, or it can be its own page, and we don't even have to talk about it, but it'll just jog our memories that...
Just an update list, like.
Yeah.
like we used to do for grants. That kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, that needs to go back in as a part.
One of the balls with not having Megan Powers here
Oh,
juggling,
okay.
so.
Got it.
And the manager's report should be out this
Oh,
week.
here.
We had some items that we were missing,
Project,
so
Bob.
I want to have it complete for you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Anything
Dave,
else?
do you have a
from-
list started of our projects? Maybe we can start with that. It looked like you did, so,
Yeah, he's got,
yeah.
I see I'm missing the parking garage. That's one of them, and I know-
I'll put a list together and email it to y'all, and if there's something I'm missing, we'll add it to the list.
Well,
Do you
maybe,
want to
you know.
maybe add the parking garage to the workshop?
I think there's actually money in the budget to start engineering on that. But
Yes,
I think what we seriously need to do is talk about how that is going to be paid for. And I keep going back to parking rates. And we've got $200,000 in the budget to get that started. A traffic light at Johns Pass, at Gulf Boulevard and 130th, where that parking garage will go. Although FDOT pays for it, we have to contribute. And our contribution may be as much as $300,000 on that traffic light. So those, between the parking garage and the traffic light, which is going to do away with 2 crosswalks, by the way, so you're not stopping and then stopping and then stopping. I think the time has come. We need a traffic light there, and it's going to make it safer, particularly if we put a parking garage there. We're going to request a traffic study when it's high tourist season to get the bang for the buck on the traffic count, to be sure the state goes for it. It sounds very good right now as far as them going for it, but but that's when we need to do that. And the state will take care of the traffic study, we just need to let them know when. So maybe during this workshop that we don't have much going on, we really need to, take a look at it, look at what, I know what the parking rates are around here, and that's why I've been bringing it up for a good while now, but it certainly hasn't, certainly $2.50 an hour is not driving anyone away from Johns Pass Village, and I don't think 25 cents an hour is going to drive anyway from Johns Pass Village or from the beach lots. I just don't.
Yeah, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, if I can make the suggestion, let's put it on the workshop, especially since we'll have all the information from the earlier meeting that day from the Village Association. I think it'd be a good time for us to talk about it and kind of solidify what we're all comfortable with as far as raising the rate and dedicating, and I think that's what we've spoken about as well, is if it's going to be a 50% or 50-cent increase, that money is going to go directly towards paying down the debt of the parking structure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that if we can, that's easy to justify across the board. If we're not going to just throw it into the general fund as just something to use, if this money is going to be towards paying this, so we can limit the amount of actual taxpayer funds that are going towards the parking garage and generate revenue from it, well, that should be an easy sell.
Yeah. And is that the day we're supposed to have a meeting with Johns Pass?
22nd in the morning, yep.
Ooh, I need to get that on my calendar.
8 o'clock, sir.
I'll send you an appointment. I'll make sure everybody has it.
And as far as the
Workshop
library.
town hall parking at 8 a.m. Okay.
Sorry.
It's on there. Okay.
And I have a quick library update that, library and myself and our construction person are meeting with the building department tomorrow to discuss our new parking lot and the striping of it and the sloping of it, and it may be that they need to spend a significant amount of their $1 million on resloping at least the disabled and handicapped parking spots to be compliant with the law. So I'll know more tomorrow when we meet, and we'll iron something out. But we're still going forward, and I don't know if anyone's noticed, but the library's been painted inside and out.
Yeah.
It's a lot more open inside.
Good. Has there been any talk about maybe a little coffee shop in there?
No. Would you like me to bring that up, Mayor?
I think it'd be a
They
good
probably don't want
addition for a
coffee
lot of
amongst
the
the
people
books,
that go
but-
in and
Yeah.
look at magazines and.
Well, they do, I think they have a little stand there,
Do
and
they?
coffee's $1, but it's not a little shop,
Okay.
but I'm sorry.
Well, I guess we fill up the workshop after all, a little bit for a short one. Any other commissioners have anything? Mr. Trask, have you got anything for us?
I have two things. You remember that my partner Jay Danio had sent a memo to each one of you relative to the Randall Luzier versus Randall Luzier and Catherine Cowart versus the City of Madeira Beach case that was filed in 2016. He's asking for an executive session out of the Sunshine meeting that has been tentatively set for October 13th at 5 p.m. That's before your regular meeting. And I just wanted to confirm that that is acceptable. I did hear from 3 of the commissioners. I want to make sure that it was acceptable to all the commissioners. October the 13th at 5 p.m. So just be an hour before your commission meeting. Should take about an hour. Those that will be present will be the commission, the city manager, myself, and Jay Danio. And Nancy Meyer also from our office.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
And just one other update, I wanted to let you know that about an hour ago, Rob Eschenfelder was appointed as the town attorney for the town of Reddington Shores. You'll remember that Jim Denhart had been their city attorney for 30-some years. He retired a couple of weeks ago. They did their interviews today, and Rob was just appointed. That doesn't mean that he's not available for here, obviously. So there's a lot of things he's working on for Madeira Beach. He'll continue to do that, but I wanted to let you know that. So we've Madeira Beach, Reddington Shores, Reddington Beach, North Reddington Beach, Indian Rocks Beach. Those are all the cities that we're representing on this end, and of course we pick up on the other side, Bel Air Bluffs and so on. So I'm really proud of Rob. This is actually the second city that he's been appointed to as
That's
city
great.
attorney.
That's great. Glad he's right up the street.
Yep.
They got a good man, and he's a really sharp dresser.
Where's that pocket Thank you, that's it.
So, City Clerk, can you get us an updated sheet of meetings? 'Cause it has changed
Yes,
since
sir.
the last one that was out, so everybody's covered on that. Mr. Daniels, what have you got for us?
Since we're not meeting for 2 weeks, I did want to, I know Commissioner Hodges mentioned about our speakers at the Rotary meeting next Tuesday. The following Tuesday, we actually have somebody that's near and dear to our hearts, Mayor Hendricks is speaking at the Rotary, so.
I better break out my joke book, I guess.
Okay.
And that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk?
I don't have anything, and I'll go on and publish the shade meeting, special meeting.
Okay, with that, having no more business, this meeting is adjourned at 7:39 p.m.